always change. There's things that our parents had in their generation, barriers to entry were way harder. So
there's always going to be something,
and it's more of a case
easy, is it?
how do you maneuver within the market?
Got it. Hello and welcome back to 0 to 60. On behalf of LDNLUX Entertainment, we provide you with dope chats in luxury cars with your favourite entrepreneurs, entertainers and personalities. I'm your host, Em Lavontel, and in today's episode, we've got a man with over a decade of experience within the property field. He's worked across property management, HMOs, rent-to-rent, new builds, the list absolutely goes on. He's got a strong social media presence as well, where he regularly shares tips, tricks, interviews and just insightful content regarding the property market, and we are just so lucky to have him here with us today. It is the man himself, property presenter, investor, developer, PropertyByKazy. Woo!
Thank you for having me on.
Right, it's my ritual on my show for you to give me one word to sum up how you're feeling right now in life, or just today, if you got to think about life.
Stressed out right now.
Oh no!
Very stressed
What's
out.
going on? Like, why are you stressed, Kazy? What's going on in your mind, in your life right now?
I think it's growth. Whenever you're trying to grow and come out of your comfort zone, you know, you're dealing with new challenges, things that maybe you're not as comfortable with, but you know, nothing great happens in your comfort zone. So I think it's good stress.
Okay, cool. And how are you managing stress?
So recently, I think I've worked on really trying to build a team, because you know, if you are the only person within your business, or you're the best person at everything within your team, then your business only has the potential of you. Whereas actually finding experts that you can trust and delegate to, I think has been my focus. So even in terms of sort of changing structure and branching out to even offer people that I think are really good, you know, potential shares in specific elements of the business and specific companies, to say, you know what, you take this, you take the baton with this one and run with that. I think that's kind of my focus, to be able to grow at a faster pace.
No, that's so interesting. Do you know why? Because I think partnership is like something that people either shy away from, or they just have like really big egos and they don't want to kind of share like that kind of, they don't want to allow somebody else into what they're doing because they want full ownership over it, where I feel like it's not always about that. And sometimes you can excel and go so much further when you actually partner with people. And that's why I'm happy you said that. Like, get people that are 100%. Good at things that you're not good at. Like,
and the reality is you can't do everything.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of the time, even more so like within our community, people want to just own everything for the sake of ownership. But would you rather own 100% of a business making 100,000 or 50% of a business making 100 million?
This is the thing.
I think it's
the obsession with like owning everything.
Yeah,
I think.
And I think that with, you know, we're in a really great generation where everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, which is great. But at the same time, it's like understanding ownership for the right reasons. Like, you know, in terms of, do you just want to own it? Do you want to be a boss? Do you want to have your own time? Do you want to be self? Like, what's the reason that you're getting into ownership, and understanding that at certain points you can give away a piece of the pie to be part of, you know, a bigger movement.
And essentially, like, no one person can do everything. Like, to create an empire, give me a name of someone that's done it from start to finish by themselves. It's absolutely physically impossible.
Yeah.
So when you put it like that, you know, just kind of debunks it, really. Usually I do 5 questions with my guests, but I feel like it might be a bit more appropriate to kind of alter it for you a little bit today. So there are 3 words that pop up when I put your name into Google. So the most
I've never heard this before, so I'm interested myself.
The most searched words that come up when you put in PropertyByKazy. So the first one is net worth.
Okay.
So clearly people are very, very interested.
People are trying to find out.
Have you ever looked into your net worth? Do you have a rough idea? What are your thoughts on net worth? Do you pay attention to it?
I do, but I think for me, I think it's all about like goals and what that means, because I think it's important to understand, just as a benchmark, like, money is a very good measure of success, but at the same time, at the moment, I'm focused on what I would call like a wealth kind of creation area of my life and my growth. So I'm focusing on flips, adding value. So a lot of the time, I buy a house, the one that we went to go and see today, quite open with figures, bought the house for sort of 600, I think it was 60,000, and that's what it's currently worth on paper. But we start spending money and increase, hope to sell for about 1.1 million. It's all about adding value. But at any given time, I might have sold something, might be buying something. I've got 4 projects in construction at the moment, another sort of 3 or 4 in the pipeline, and other stuff that we're looking at. So it's very varied. But in terms of, I think, goals, again, it really changes, because it depends. Do you want cash flow? Do you want something that's going to benefit from capital appreciation? Do you want liquid capital? How
would you actually calculate it though? Because it's based on your assets.
Yeah.
So what
property is a strange one, because for example,
how do you calculate that?
If like now prices are so high in London, right, that like a house, almost anywhere, 3-bedroom house is like $500,000. So are you worth $500,000? But if you bought that as a residential purchase, you might have put in a 5 or 10% deposit, which means you have an asset worth $500,000 that's yours, you own it, but you also have debt against it.
Would that be classed as the asset going towards your net worth, the whole property, or is it the percentage you own?
Well, you own all of it, but it's debt versus it's assets versus liabilities. So on somebody's net worth is quite skewed when they're in property.
Interesting. So it's when the mortgage is cleared.
Yeah, but that being said, with the majority of my properties, they're on something called interest only, which means I have no intention to pay the mortgage. Or like, sorry, we'll caveat that when we get out of the petrol station. Yeah. But that sounds crazy. Like I'm just not going to pay off the mortgage. So yeah, I don't mean don't pay your mortgages. Definitely pay your mortgages, because otherwise your credit, you're done in property. What I mean is that it's going to remain on an interest-only mortgage, which means you're paying the interest to the bank for the loan, but you're not paying off the principal sum. So you remain with the same level of debt to the bank. And the reason for that is I'd rather, if you're paying it off, owning a property outright. Say for example that same property is worth 500k, £500,000. If you're in the outright and you're getting £1,500 of rent, that's all you're getting for your £500,000 cash. Versus if you put that, the money that you can get out, so the 75%, so £350,000, what could you do with that money versus, what it's making you in the property?
But again, I mean, I guess, say you're not somebody that is interested in the whole development side of things and doesn't have the time or energy for it, then that would make more sense for them, because then it's a bit more like I own the property and I'm just going to rent it out, and it's more of a convenience thing for them. But
even with that, so a lot of people's strategy is something like, you kind of almost call it like empty the bucket. So effectively you buy a property, and over the longer term, generally speaking, particularly in London, property prices go up.
Yeah.
So you could just own this one property and continue paying it off. However, when you're in that one property, you own it outright with 500k, just that one property may be getting you £1,500 in rent, and you've got no mortgage, you're getting that exactly. But if you had a loan on it that maybe is costing you £1,000 for argument's sake, if you have a loan, then you're only making £500 profit. But you could have 4 of those properties, each making you, so it just really depends. And then you also, not only do you get a higher monthly return from having that type of portfolio, as they go up in value, you also benefit from the increase in value from each one of those properties.
Right.
So rather than that property is worth 500k, that goes up by 10% and it makes you 50,000. If you own 4 of those properties that are collectively worth 2 million and go up by 10%, it makes you 200,000.
I mean, do you know what? That is a good point. That is a fair point. And I feel like throughout this interview, I might have to pause you, because for the average person watching that isn't as well versed in property, they may not understand certain terms.
Yeah.
So if I pull you up, I'm gonna pull you up for the sake of the viewer. Right. So we covered net worth. The next most Googled word after your name is your age. Yeah. People want to know how old you are, Kazy. How old are you now?
I'm 33.
Looking like 23.
Try it.
What do you drink? What do you eat?
A lot of fruit pastels.
Oh,
I feel
I was
like
gonna say fruit.
No, I
And
feel
then
like
you
the
added
reverse. I
pastels.
feel like the reverse diet. I've got a childish diet.
And then you added the pastels. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Do you drink a lot of water? Like, is there anything you do?
I try, I'm not really. I try, but no. Do you know what? I don't get like. If people see me, they're gonna know that I'm lying. I've got to be honest. My diet is terrible. It's a lot of fish fingers and chips.
Oh my god, that sounds like primary school. Oh my goodness. And lastly, YouTube. So I'm guessing people are just curious to know, like, so share your YouTube channel and the type of content that you put out.
Yeah, so the YouTube is PropertyByKazy, all one word. And effectively, the YouTube is, we have like our own podcast, so we interview industry experts in the property space. There's like a famous saying that like if you give like somebody who can't manage £100, they can't manage 100,000. We also do a weekly development tours, so we go out and see some of the best developments across the UK. That can be people that have bought their first house, people that have said, look, they've taken their budget and bought maybe the cheapest house, so somewhere in Wales for like £40,000 and are refurbishing it remotely. I don't mean to be rude about your property, but it was also it's not the nicest at the moment when you come in. So what were some of the issues? And people that are doing luxury houses for upwards of £5 million. Follow me and you see what we've done inside.
What classifies as a luxury property?
So, I mean, luxury is very much...
Is that subjective?
It's subjective. Okay. However, you have terms like in terms of value, like prime, subprime, and super prime. So
what's that?
So prime, London-wise, is 5 million plus, effectively.
So prime luxury. So
prime type of property is probably like £5 million plus. Then you've got sort of super prime, which is above 10 million.
Okay.
And then that's subprime, which is around the sort of 1.5 to sort of 3 million price point.
I see. Okay, that's interesting to know.
But because luxury is like, for example, what you get in Bradford versus what you get in Fulham, you could get a 7-bedroom detached house with a tennis court, swimming pool, etc. for maybe 700,000.
True.
In Fulham, you maybe get a 1-bedroom flat.
That's very true. So it's relative.
Yeah.
It's very relative. Okay. So you're here, of course, to talk about property. We need to chat about property.
Yeah.
I'm talking for the people at home, the average Joe.
Yeah.
They want to get on the property ladder.
Yeah.
Kazy, realistically, have they missed the loop? Like, is it too late to jump on the property ladder in London?
No, not. I think that's why, one of the reasons why I started the YouTube, the Instagram, was because I think, one of the first things I learned in property is like, when's the best time to buy? And, it was always yesterday. But if you missed yesterday, the best time to buy is today.
Now, yeah.
So it's all about, and I'm not saying it's easy to buy. I'm not, saying, oh, you can just get into property with no money, but you can prepare yourself for what you need, things that will allow you to buy a property.
Okay, so buying in London, we all know it's expensive. So is it too late to buy in London?
So there
for the average person? Because look at the average salary in the UK. So what, about 40k?
Yeah, so I think it's less than that, but yes.
Yeah, exactly, give or take.
So it's hard because the gap between the average salary versus the average property price is increasing, but that's increasing over time. So if you can get on the property ladder, now you're going to put yourself in a better position. I think what's becoming more common is obviously people buying with, whether it's partners, friends, siblings as well, is one that's coming increasingly more common. Also with larger build to rent developers coming into the market. A lot of the new builds now have maybe 2 ensuite bathrooms and then a guest toilet. So they work for sharers really well as well, where there's not that typical master bedroom, second room, so it's hard to find a property that meets your requirements. But to work it backwards, it's all about sort of saving. It's about your credit score as well, because that's another key factor that's going to enable you to get on the property ladder. If
you were to pinpoint like the 5 most important things you need, like to set yourself up to buy your first property, what would you put? What would you pick?
Okay, so firstly, I think we live in a very materialistic, everything is now, I want it now. But I think definitely just looking at, okay, if a property is your priority, then potentially, relaxing on the lit life for a little while, potentially not as many holidays. That not good? No good?
It's really sad.
Because it's short-term sacrifice for long-term gratification.
No, I'm kidding. No, of course, no.
But it is. But it's a
is.
balance, and there's nothing wrong also with property not being your priority.
Got it.
Because it's more than fine to say, you know what, I don't want a car right now. Uber works perfectly fine for me, but it's just working on what your priorities are. So, you know, I think potentially that short-term sacrifice, if it is your focus, then credit is a massive.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, where does credit come into this?
So, you know, it's effectively when you want to borrow, it's firstly how much you can borrow. Your credit is going to, you know, have an impact on that, and also how affordable the credit is, because the better your credit is, the less risk you present to the borrower, and therefore the cheaper they can lend you money at. The next thing after that is your actual income, because the way in which how much, as you mentioned, it's based on salary. Because when you're looking at a residential property, it's about affordability. So your income, and that also links back into your expenses, because some people are on a great salary, 100k a year,
they spend too much.
They spend so they've got a car on finance for £1,000 a month. They've taken a loan. They've, you know, got best gym membership, David Lloyd, Black Card.
So they're going to look at all of that, right?
And their affordability is going to be limited. Same with, you know, dependence.
So then, okay, I'm trying to be practical here. So I'm thinking, I'm Sally. I live in South London. With a smart plan for me be, let me go into full-time employment, get a decent to good wage, cut back on all my expenses, just save for a year, and then make sure I've got good credit. If I'm in that position, is it looking bright for me? Is it looking like I can probably get myself onto the property ladder? Again,
it depends on exactly what your salary is, but again, it's looking. I think really the main thing is having a plan. Like, how much can I save realistically as a deposit? Because in most cases, you're going to need that 10% deposit.
What's a good amount to save?
Well, okay,
I know it depends on the property, because obviously there's different prices, but an average.
Let's say, for example, for argument's sake, you're looking at, you know, first property with South London, about to drive through sort of South Norwood. You know, you can anywhere from sort of the flat is anywhere from maybe 240 to, you know, I mean, they can be loads, but say 340. So say at that lower end at 240, you know, you would need a 10% deposit, which is 24,000. You would then have a minimal amount of stamp duty, because you get a discount from being a first-time buyer. So maybe a couple thousand for stamp duty, and then
it's still a lot.
No, it's a lot, but I'm just putting
still a couple thousand.
A couple of thousand for stamp duty. Then got your legal fees. This is
the part people really overlook, by the way.
Yeah, because I think people think 10% deposit.
Yeah, that's it. There are like 10 other things you need to also think about, and things that take up your expenses as well. So, including those things you just stated. So, it's not all, you know, flowers and daisies. But what I wanted to ask is, because you specialise in South London properties, and you've taken, is that because you're from South London? It was just probably made most sense to you because you know the area. Yeah, so for me it's about efficiencies. I could have looked at deals all over London and all over the UK. You're going to have to travel there as well. But I'm going to have to travel. Also, if you send me a deal in Tottenham, I've then got to spend time researching the Tottenham market, understand if I'm getting it for good value for money. Because one of the key things in property is you don't make your money when you sell, and that sounds a bit backwards, but you make it when you buy. If you buy at the right price, you can afford to make mistakes, you can afford a load of other things, but you have to buy it efficiently to start with. So that understanding the market and understanding if you're getting something at a good price is one of the most sort of paramount things you need to consider in property. So you started a shisha business around 2015 to 2020? I think it was maybe earlier than that. A bit earlier approximately. But around that. And then you sold your shares in 2020 due to like the effects of the pandemic. No, so shisha sold a long time ago, maybe around. Oh no! Of course, the rent to rent company. You sold your shares in 2020 because obviously at that time, people weren't renting as much and sharing accommodation. In a pandemic, the last shared accommodation probably got hit the most, and the people living in shared accommodation were most drastically affected, because they were the people, you know, typically more so in maybe retail, customer services, things that were really affected by the lockdown. I understand that. Back to the shisha company, so before we get onto the rent to rent business. So you saving that 80k or so, give or take, to invest into property, your first property. You're saying you had bad credit. You had your company. I had no credit. You had no credit. But yes, it wasn't. What's the difference though? Because so you're saying that your credit score was average, but you just didn't have any debt.
I guess, yeah.
Is that what it is? You have no credit
because nobody knows you. So if I turn up to you tomorrow and say, "Let me £100," you have no idea who I am.
So you had no like phone bill. Does that even count?
Yeah, I think like so. Phone bills count. Phone bills are a good way to start.
Okay,
like, stuff like SIM only is really good way to start.
Great.
It's low risk to the person giving you the SIM card.
Okay, cool. So you didn't have any of that.
It was just very minimal. Whatever I had, like, I didn't have any credit cards. Don't think I had any overdrafts, any sort of facilities like that.
I see. But then I'm just trying to think. For someone that's really young, isn't it quite common that they wouldn't have much credit?
Yeah, it is, which is why it's less common, obviously, for people to buy at an earlier age.
Right. I see.
Also, I was, self-employed, which makes it even harder to lend.
Yeah.
Because it's very different the way, you sort of show proof of earnings. It's through your tax overviews and 2 years worth of accounts. So I didn't go down the conventional route of buying a residential property first.
Yeah.
I bought an investment property, and I bought that using a bridging loan, which is effectively like a short-term funding method, which has higher rates of interest. However, they look more into the risk of the investment as opposed to the person borrowing.
Are these still around now?
Yeah, so bridging loans are very common. Like, I mean, realistically, for property investors, the majority of them use either a bridging facility or development finance for projects, because mortgages are long-term lending facilities, and that's what they should be used for. So if you're flipping property or developing property, you would generally use those types of lending. Okay.
So saving that first 80K, what did you sacrifice?
I think it was like, so it was more so, my attendance at university.
I'm just not gonna act like 80K is easy to save, because how long did it take you as well?
So the shisha business, for example, like after, set up originally, we just had premises where we were just going around and doing it in bars and nightclubs, and really fortunate at like a young age, managed to get into, it was like Proud in 02, those times, like biggest club in the country. Then doing festivals like V Festival and things like that, shisha super profitable. The markups then were like 1,000% markup. So you're doing like 5K days, and then so if you're at a festival over like a 3-day period,
that's crazy.
You can have some good terms. But yeah, I think definitely a lot of clothes. Like people knew me back then. They said, Kaz just mad. Like I had long hair. My hair was never done. There was no budget for the. Budget for the barber.
Homes on the Hammer. Video on YouTube, and I honestly didn't even recognize you for a second.
Kazy, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Congratulations, same to you, Tex.
Lovely to meet you too.
Good on you, chaps. Well done.
Thank you.
Why this particular property then?
It was just in the right area and for the right price. So we were looking for something as a longer term investment. We've done a lot of short term, buys to sell on.
You look so different with the plaits, honestly. Changes your whole face. But so you're saying you just basically kind of just scaled back?
Yeah, just focused on what was focused on what was important.
And how long did it take you to save for your first house deposit?
That was probably sort of 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the deposit. That was not too far from here.
Did that include all the extra costs?
Yeah, that was the deposit. That was the works money. That was the stamp duty.
Okay.
That was that's pretty much everything.
Everything covered in.
I remember my lender at the time, or the broker, he was like, "You're buying your first property like at auction with a bridging loan. That's a bit of a baptism of fire." But it's risk and reward. And to be honest with you, like we made some.
Why is it so risky?
Because effectively, a bridging loan, you have a short-term period. So if you fail to meet the obligation,
so how long?
So I think that's 9 months. The loan.
Okay, that is quite short. Yeah.
So at the end of it, you've basically either got to be in a position to refinance that property, which means you being mortgageable, so whether that's a buy-to-let or residential mortgage, or sell that property. If you don't, pay them back, you have a very short period of time to do that, to sort it out. Otherwise, potentially your property could be repossessed, and it says that on all the paperwork.
So you were successful, clearly.
Yeah. So that first. So
what did you have to do then? So once you've now got this property at auction, what was your plan?
So it was
to make sure you can actually pay it back or whatever.
So so looked at it, and it was a case of how can we add value? So beyond just refurbishing a property, approached a freeholder for something called a license to alter agreement that allows you to change the layout of the property. Also got building regulations to sign it all off. And what we did was it had a large kitchen, and we turned that kitchen into a additional bedroom. So turned it from a 1-bed to a 2-bed. And then what was the living room then became the open plan kitchen living room.
Right.
And that additional bedroom is, if you go on Zoopla and Rightmove today and go, type in a postcode and type in 1-bedroom flat and then do 2-bed, you'll see the difference in price.
Right.
So adding that value, I think bought for around sort of give or take 210,000. Spent maybe £30,000 on the property, plus stamp duty, plus finance costs.
Yeah.
I think sold for in excess of 300,000 within that.
That's really good though.
So that's it. But that being said, I think I would do it again, or at the beginning of my journey, I would do it again just to break even, because the experience you get from
I would have asked that,
process.
if you were to go back in time, would you do that all over again?
100%.
Okay.
That was effectively, like your proof of concept.
Yeah.
Okay, like
I
there's
can
something
do
here. This works.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations to you on that, honestly. Congratulations to you on that. Are you able to kind of foresee like what area is going to boom next?
Yes, I think, there's companies that spend literally millions on, research and marketing to see where's going to go next. So for me, I have quite a simple formula, which is follow the money. When you see, people are investing loads of money in infrastructure, like after the Olympics, around
Stratford,
those areas went crazy because the amount of money invested. When you see the Elizabeth line, Crossrail, HS2, those areas, they're talking about potentially, like we just spoke about Dartford, like Disneyland UK in Dartford.
Oh, are they?
When they spoke about Westfields going to Croydon, all of these things,
Yeah.
that if you follow the money where big players are investing, generally speaking, you see the capital appreciation. But outside of that, London is like a nucleus. Every time an area gets too expensive and you get priced out, people go to the next area, and that's the same reason the gentrification.
Where would you say is
good
booming outside London right now?
So that the surrounding sort of like commuter places are doing really well in comparison to how much they were worth 5 years ago. So again, areas like Dartford, areas like Ruislip, have done really well over.
Because they're just outside, isn't it? They're not too far out as well.
But there's even places in London, for example, that they're still expensive, but relatively speaking, like South Norwood, in comparison to Crystal Palace.
Is that London?
Pardon? South Norwood. It's SE25 and SE19. Don't do that. Don't do that, because I'm sure you claim EN as like London, a lot of those areas. So let's not do that.
Actually, I am in London. I can still use my Oyster card
Zone
and
7.
my contactless and EN. Yes.
Zone 7 is crazy. I didn't even know it went to there, but we moved.
I can't. But yeah, so I see what you're saying. So there are like areas.
But it's relative, because imagine a mile down the road. So Crystal Palace, a flat is 500,000-600,000.
You go a mile down.
You go a mile down the road. It's half the price. Eventually, it's that whole trickle down of people are going to say that I couldn't afford there, so I'm willing to pay more for there. And
so that's how you've kind of got to see it.
Yeah, definitely. If you're in stuff for the long term, like our parents' generation, people that maybe bought in your Brixtons, Peckhams, Notting Hills, Tottenhams, they're laughing, and that's one of the reasons that made me say, this property is a thing. Like I remember speaking to a gentleman who's probably in his mid-70s now, and he was talking about he bought his council property in Notting Hill, like got planning to convert it into 3 flats. Each of those flats is worth like £800,000. That's 2.4 million from something he bought originally for like 100,000 or less. He made more money from that one property than he made working his entire life. So it's when you hear stories like that and you put it into context of, this is an investment vehicle that, number one, is tangible, we can touch it.
Definitely. It exists, it's real.
We have an understanding of it because we all need a home. We know that there's going to be a demand. We live on a small island with a limited amount of space. So it's not great and it's not fair that prices are going up, but if you get on, if you get on early enough and can get on, you can be part of that journey.
Got it.
So yeah, I think for me, that's why it's always been sort of the number one asset class.
And talking of diversifying, do you put your money into anything else outside of property?
Yeah.
In terms of investments?
Little bits, like crypto, we don't want to talk about that, but might come back. But tried that, but I think tried to dabble. I think, in terms of, there's an investment, it's called EIS or something, basically. EIS or SEIS, which is basically a tax relief that you can offset tax bills against investing in other businesses.
Okay.
You can claim 50% of the initial investment back, which means that for smaller scale businesses, invest in some of those just to diversify.
Got it.
Which I think is good, and it's a good. So it's from a tax perspective, it's good. It's good because you can work with people that have have built a business but need the capital. Got a company based in Dubai. We do that sort of luxury packaging. Business partner of mine.
What's that called?
45 Inc.
Nice.
So yeah, so that's again just diversification. But I think now my focus is more sort of vertical integration within my field. Which means basically things that can complement me. So having like the PropertyByKazy or the PBK media company that's going to be doing media within property.
Nice.
You know, even in terms of working with people in the community, whether it's through education or financial.
Do you do mentorship?
I don't at the moment, just because it's sort of time specific. I don't necessarily think I have the time, and I'm still honing my own craft. But it's something I'm going to go into in the long term. I like to sponsor, you know, sort of local football clubs. So Most Wanted FC, they're smashing it. Do some work with those young boys and girls in regards to financial literacy, and then just sort of general talks throughout the year, just talking about the importance of money management as well.
Probably the most important part of it all, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, these apartments, are they set up purely to just be rented, or can people actually buy them?
So there's both. There's there's build to rent schemes that are becoming a lot more popular.
Build to rent.
So people are building and they're selling the schemes off the pension fund, example. They're just as as investment vehicles, and there are people that are building to do what I do, which is to flip and sell on. I think there's a housing shortage in the UK. We've never really met our supply quotas to supplying new property. And that's one of the reasons property prices are so high, because there's a supply and demand issue.
But they're creating more of these new build apartments, but they're not affordable for the average person. So what?
I mean,
why is this even happening?
Well, so building costs, for example, build costs have gone up dramatically. Whether it comes to steel, timber, glass, they've been going up in some months 10% a month. Because of Brexit, labour shortages, labour's also gone up, so property prices are getting more expensive. But collectively, we're in an area where we have double-digit inflation. So prices are going to continue. Property prices are just another good that's being sold that's going to continue to increase. I mean, there is the argument that obviously prices are moving too fast away from the increase in wages.
They are.
But I think.
So would you say in that case, then the longer you're leaving it to buy a property, the harder it's just going to get?
Yeah, there's not like an easy way around it to say that. But with increased transport links as well, you don't necessarily have to live in the heart of London. A lot of people are saying, okay, I've got friends that started buying in Dartford, for example, for half the price they could have bought for where they grew up, but got on the ladder earlier. As Dartford went up in value, they could then sort of migrate back into London because they took the sacrifice. And I think it's not always about everything is now. Just because you grew up in Peckham doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you have to live forever. And you have an entitlement to stay there. I think we can become quite entitled to say that I just want this. Well, why is it not fair? And it's not like things have always changed. There's things that our parents had in their generation, whether that was that racism or barriers to entry were way harder. So
there's always going to be something,
and it's more of a case
easy, is it?
How do you maneuver within the market?
Got it. So when you get see a property, do you just instantly kind of figure out what you can do with it? Does it just come to you like that?
Yes, on the smaller scale stuff, I look at it and I say, okay, you know what, I know how we can make this layout work, because in the market that we're in now, it's quite competitive. It's not just enough to be let me tidy it up and let me just put in a new kitchen, new bathroom. It's all about just forcing the increase in the value. So how can we make a better layout or a more, more luxurious layout or something that people are going to prefer? So effectively, that's what we've got to kind of do.
Nice.